Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our webinar programs brought to you by Allego. I'm your host, Marcus Woodard, and I'm coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina. Today, I've got a great topic for you. Be the mentor who matters, the missing link in your team's performance. Now, for those folks that are on the go, yes, this presentation is being recorded, and an on-demand version will be emailed out later today. For those of you that love learning in the moment, thanks for carving out the time with us today. Now I'm going to check to see if your listening skills are up to par here. This is important. I want everybody to go into the chat window and make sure we switch that drop down from hosts and panelists to everyone. I repeat, switch that drop down from hosts and panelists to everyone. After you do that, answer this one for me. Have you ever been a mentor to someone? If so, was it business related or life related? I'll say that one more time. Have you ever been a mentor to someone? Business related or life related? After that, go ahead and add your questions, comments into the chat or the Q&A panel, and I'm going to do my best to get those answered live. If you've missed any of this year's webinars, check out our full library of on-demand recordings, and no, you don't need a library card to learn more. Just visit allego.com/webinar and check them out. With that, I'd like to introduce Colleen Stanley. Colleen is the president and founder of SalesLeadership, Inc., a sales development firm. She is the author of 3 books, Emotional Intelligence for Sales Success and Emotional Intelligence for Sales Leadership, now published in 11 languages. Her latest book, Be the Mentor Who Mattered, released in November 2025. Salesforce named Colleen one of the top sales influencers of the 21st century. She's also been named as one of the top 30 global sales gurus for 8 years in a row, earning the #1 spot in 2024. Colleen, thanks for joining us today, and I'm going to kick it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Marcus. And I so appreciate you having me as your guest. And, one of the first questions I get asked a lot, because my other books have been written about sales specifically and sales leadership, is why did I write a book on mentorship? Well, it's because I am a product of mentorship. I had the good fortune to start with a company many, many years ago, Varsity Brands. And when I started with them, we were the David in the David and Goliath fight. So well, I guess we were technically a startup. Now, the good news is when you start with a small company that's a fast growth company, they will give people like me an opportunity. And what I mean by that, I didn't have any sales experience, expertise, but I had a tremendous work ethic. So I started out as a field rep. And then after 4 years, I raised my hand and asked for and received a promotion to regional sales manager. So I moved to Memphis, Tennessee, home of the corporate office. And I remember sitting in my office, I had a window. I had a door and there was a nameplate outside my door with my name on it, right? And I had a big old desk. And I am looking at my business cards that read Regional Sales Manager. And I am so terrified because I actually don't have any idea what a regional sales manager does. Remember, fast growth companies can give you opportunities, but sometimes they don't have the time or resources to give you a lot of training. So I'm sitting at my desk. I did tell you I had a window, right? Yeah. And the fear mongers start. Who are you to be a sales leader? You're just a small town kid from Iowa. Why did you take this job? You were doing just fine as a salesperson. And the biggest fear mongers that showed up were, they're going to find out you do not know what you're doing. Well, it did not take long. About 3 months into my new position, my boss's boss, Klein Boyd, walks into my office and says, hey, you got a minute? And I'm thinking, well, it shouldn't take that long to get fired. And Klein sits down. Now let me give you some context around Klein. Klein is a Southern gentleman. Klein is a kind gentleman, and he's also one of the original investors in the company. So he's got a lot riding on whether this company is going to be successful or not. And the conversation begins. Colleen, I have been observing you, and you're putting up a real good front. However, however, I recognize that you are struggling. So I came into the office today to remind you that my office is it's right down the hall. And if you ever want someone to talk to, why, I'd welcome that conversation. And then he got up to leave. I turned around, Colleen, one more thing. You're gonna be just fine. Those 5 words were a mentor moment. Those 5 words, that conversation was a mentor conversation. And sometimes we don't believe or know that one moment, one conversation can make a huge difference in a person's life because the conversation for me changed. And the conversation that changed was this: maybe, just maybe, I can make it as a regional sales manager. I mean, if this smart businessman thinks I can make it, maybe I can. That conversation resulted in my territory becoming #1 in the country 2 years later. Mentorship matters, and I believe it matters more than ever because we're really in something I believe is called the perfect storm. Many of you heard of this story. It's been made into a movie. It happened in 1991, where there were three unrelated weather fronts that came together, creating a horrific storm and loss of life. Well, I think we're in a little bit of a perfect storm today, where we've got three non-related weather fronts coming together. And the first storm is the breakdown in community. The second storm is the unintended consequences of social media and technology. And the third storm is the pace of change. So my goal today is I'm going to first explain why I believe we've got a greater urgency for mentorship than ever before because of this perfect storm, and then give you some solutions how you can become the mentor that matters, that you can create mentorship cultures. But let's first explore the breakdown in community. Now, back in the day, when I was in business, many of us reported every day into an office. And, often what happened is without knowing it, you were really creating community. You were getting mentorship. And it might have been informal conversations in a hallway, maybe a conversation in the break room. It was very easy to form friendships. You might grab a lunch, a cup of coffee, go out for cocktails after work. And as Gallup research has shown for years, people that have a best friend at work are more engaged, they're happier, they stay longer. So without knowing it, remote work, for all of the positive benefits, I work remotely now. We as leaders must be aware that if we are not highly intentional about building community, building best friends at work, we're going to have some of those consequences. Recall, and that's why mentorship is so important. But let's take a look at the second storm here, the unintended consequences of social media. Let me first address social media and then I'll address technology. Jonathan Haidt is the author of The Anxious Generation. If you are a sales leader, I recommend reading this book, even if you're not married, you do not have kids, because I believe it will help you understand and manage the next generation that's coming into the workforce. Now, look at some of these stats here based on his research. Adolescent suicide rate up 167%, 91 for the boys. A depression diagnosis up, and all has been related to the introduction of the smartphone. Now, what does that mean for you as a leader? Well, take a look, 2010. Many of these people were 15 years old at that time. They are now entering your workplace. And I'm not saying all of them are anxious. Here's a couple of things to be aware of. They may be a little bit more risk averse. They may not be as used to making decisions because part of this anxious generation is that they've also been overparented. The helicopter parents have turned in and gotten zoomed. So as a leader, you're going to have to be aware that maybe in your onboarding processes, you will need to teach more about resiliency, sales grit, taking risk. For many of these people, because their heads have been buried in cell phones, they went through COVID, They may lack some communication and connection skills. Again, your training programs may have to change on how to build connection, how to communicate. But let's take a look at another unintended consequence with technology. And by the way, I've been preaching and ranting about this one since 2006. With the onset of technology, I have found that we are becoming a highly distracted, unfocused, and not present workforce because everybody's looking down instead of looking up. Literally, there is addiction to technology. Now, what does this mean for you as a sales leader? Well, number one, no one learns when they're multitasking. This is biology 101, physiology 101. It does not matter if you're 100 or if you're 15. And what I have seen is a lack of leadership. Because what I notice, let's just take company meetings. Back in the day, when you went into a company meetings, here's where you can go, are you kidding? We did not have computers. No, that was the day of dinosaurs, right? You would come into a company meeting, you'd bring in your yellow notepad, and then you did something very strange. You talked to the person next to you. You built relationships, you built community. Today, you know what I see in meetings? Everybody comes in, they've got their laptops out, they got the phone out. They are more concerned about sending one more email than making one more connection. And as leaders, we wonder, why don't I have the teams? Why don't I have the teamwork? Because often you're modeling the same behavior in your coaching sessions, just walking around. As leaders, if you desire to build community, which builds retention, which builds happiness, we must become the leaders that say, no, no, we're not giving in to that second storm, the addiction to technology. And then let's take a look at the third storm. It's called Whack-A-Moleville. The third storm is the pace of change. Now, I don't know about you, but there's some days I feel like I'm in that whack-a-mole game. I learn one set of skills and then another one pops up to learn. And what it tells me is that today we can't go it alone. Now, I remember when I was hiring sales reps, it was very good to hire a lone ranger. I mean, lone rangers are self-directed, they're goal-oriented, they don't even ask for or need a lot of help. The problem is that's not going to work in today's society with the onset of AI, the amount of information we have to process. In fact, research shows that human beings process as much information in one day as an educated person did 500 years ago in a lifetime. It means we can't go it alone. And I was reminded of this when we were doing a podcast with Brandon Knight. He is the VP of sales for InMode. They were doing very well. One of his philosophies, one of his expectations as a leader is that on my team, no one goes it alone. In this day and age of AI, in this day and age of technology, in this day and age of remote working, this must be the philosophy. On this team, no one goes it alone. But let me stop for a minute. Because just like when I started first teaching emotional intelligence skills, people liked the idea, but the question looming in their head was, that's great, but Colleen, I need to make money. I'm charged with producing revenue. Does this mentorship stuff really make me any money? Absolutely. And I'm going to give you some stats that show you the return on investment with mentorship. Let's take a look at the first one. Again, going back to Gallup's research, it shows that an engaged team, and I believe that means a team that's being mentored, being paid attention to, the leader is focused, have 21% lower turnover, and this is in high turnover industries, and 51% lower turnover in low turnover industries. Now, think about what that does for your top and bottom line. You're not always out hiring and recruiting. You're not always training and retraining. But let's take a look at another stat. 66% of millennials say stay at their organization for 5 or more years because they have a mentor. This is coming from Deloitte. Look at what retention will add to your bottom line. 850,000. And I actually don't think you actually have to have a formal mentorship program. I think it's great if you do. my premise and even writing this book was create mentorship cultures. But let's take a look at one more stat because again, mentorship can sound like a nice to have initiative instead of a need to have. This stat shows that companies with mentoring programs, and I'm going to add mentorship cultures, show higher profits than those without. So let's stop here for a minute, and I'm going to ask Marcus to help me with this. Take a minute to think and reflect. Where do you think mentorship can help you improve your top and bottom line? Could it be quicker ramp up time because I've got someone teaching me? Higher retention, less turnover. Improve teamwork. We don't have the infighting, collaboration, innovation. Or if you've got something other, add to the chat. So go ahead and take a vote here.
Yep, and we've got that poll question. If you've got multiple screens, it's on one of them, I promise. Just to kind of follow up in the chat from earlier, we do have a lot of mentors in the group, Colleen.
Yay.
So
Good.
a
Good
lot
for
of
you.
people chimed in at the beginning. One question from Michonne was, what is the best way to incorporate soft sponsorship into an organizational membership or mentorship program?
I believe if I'm understanding the question correctly, soft sponsorship is championing another person. And we're actually going to talk about that a little bit. I probably will give an answer that he's not expecting, and that is paying attention. Because, see, what I see happening in this very, very busy world, we're not doing a lot of paying attention. So we don't even know who needs sponsorship. We're not seeing potential out there. We're not seeing a person that maybe doesn't even know enough to raise their hand. I believe that it's time we stop saying, go find a mentor. I believe it is time to start saying, you are the mentor, go find a mentee. So that would be my answer to that, Marcus.
Perfect. So we had a couple people chime in other motivating through times of change. Catherine said that.
Okay.
A lot of people said all of the above.
All
Um,
right.
and then Patricia said helping to pick up morale and in turn helping secure progress. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here
Okay.
and share the results. About 13% said quicker ramp time. Um, 21% said higher retention, and 60% said improved teamwork, collaboration, and innovative
Absolutely.
solutions. So we'll share those on screen for a second, and then back to you.
All right. And thanks for your help on that, Marcus. So let's go into, we're understanding the why it's more important than ever. How do we actually create these mentorship cultures? So I'm going to give you some suggestions here. Number one, I'm going to suggest that you evaluate and re-examine your hiring process. Because if you truly desire to create a mentorship culture, you may need to vet potential candidates heavier for their desire and ability to mentor, help, serve other people. And here's some questions that you may already have in your interview process, or I'm going to suggest you put in your interview guide. Tell me about a time when you helped a team member achieve a goal and there was no direct benefit to you. I'm going to share a story with you on that. Share with me a time when you helped a colleague that was struggling. What did you do? Well, the only way you can know if a colleague is struggling, you got to look up from those darn screens and pay attention. In your previous roles, did you share knowledges of best practices? How did you do that? Because we don't want people that are hoarding information. They want to be the smartest person in the room. Let me share with you a personal story about people that help other people without any recognition or acknowledgement. As I said, I had the good fortune of starting with this startup that today is a $3 billion company. I believe to my core, one of the reasons is that they hired people with a mentorship heart. We had a mentorship culture because when I was that brand new rep and I'm building a brand new territory, as I indicated with a startup, sometimes you don't get a lot of training. Well, I should say I did get training. I flew down to the Memphis corporate office at Varsity and I got 1 day of training. Then I went back out into the field and I enrolled in the second phase of training, and that was called the GGG program. Go get them, good luck. And so there were times I didn't know how to sell the product or service. I would have an upset customer. But I quickly found these two women. They were veterans of the industry, Betty and Lynette. And Varsity had recruited these veterans to come over and join their small, fast growth company. So on more than one occasion, I'd call Lynette and Betty, and I'd usually get Betty. Well, hello, darling. How are you? Good to hear from you. Yes, what's going on? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Oh, Lynette, get on the phone. Our girl's got herself in trouble again. And these two very busy, seasoned reps would give me 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And they weren't getting any recognition. They weren't getting an override on anything that I made. These two women had really generous hearts. And here's what was really interesting about them. If you met them, they would have been described as a couple of tough old broads. I mean, Lynette could make a drag on a cigarette last 2 minutes. Betty could take you out with one look. What Varsity did, they hired people that had mentorship capability. And here's one note I want to add to this. As you're examining your interview process, hire people that are coachable. Because I will say this, I have always been a coachable individual. And when you study the great coaches of the world, there's an interesting theme. They only will take on clients that are coachable. In fact, there's a great book out there I'd recommend you take a look at reading. It's called The $1 Trillion Coach, and it's about Bill Campbell. And he coached the titans of Silicon Valley. In fact, Google executive Eric Schmidt, his one question before he would take on a client is, are you coachable? So as you examine your hiring process, this is where everything begins. Are you hiring people with a servant mentality? Are you hiring coachable people? Let's take a look at the second thing to examine. What are you setting as an expectation as a leader? As I mentioned, Brandon and I set an expectation. If you're going to be on this team, no one goes it alone. Tony Dungy, the famous retired NFL coach, one of the reasons for his success was that his expectations of his players were, you're going to help the new players, even if those players could possibly take your position. And he attributes that mentorship culture, mentorship mindset to ramping up new players quickly. What's the mindset at your culture? What message are you sending? Because it always starts at the top with you. Set the expectation. On this team, no one goes it alone. Let's take a look at another expectation. Participation and contribution. Now, I've observed this in a few of my sales meetings, and here's what can happen. You've got the veteran person that shows up, or you've got a brand new hire that's just killing it. So they show up to the group sales meeting. They're kind of just doing the check it in. They're calling it in because their mindset is, I'm hitting quota. As a leader, if you do not establish a culture of we're hitting quota, you will not scale the company or you will not scale as fast as you could. See, here's what happens with mentorship cultures. The leader sets the expectation that I expect all of you to contribute. And so even if you're hitting quota, maybe you put that veteran, maybe you put that highly successful rep in charge of running the meeting because everybody needs to be contributing to everybody else's success. That's one of the reasons I became successful. Betty and Lynette were not threatened by my success. Everybody was helping each other. But let's stop for a minute. You might be a sales leader of a small company, and you really are sitting here thinking, Colleen, I want to do everything you're talking about. I do run out of time a little bit. Then let's go back in history and let's study another strategy you can bring into your organization. Encourage your sales team to find their group of vagabonds. Now, the vagabonds, take a look at this picture. You probably don't recognize him, but it is Thomas Edison, Warren Harvey, Harvey Firestone, and who's my other gentleman here? I'm going to look at my notes. It is Warren Harding. These are business titans. And they were called the vagabonds because they were known to take long road trips. So they get in their cars and drive. The idea was peer mentorship. And they get away from it all. Now think about it. They didn't even have all of the noise we needed to get away from. But what I found interesting, what I learned of this story, is this was peer mentorship at its finest. So if you're a leader that's feeling a little stretched, encourage peer mentorship, obviously in an organization, but they can also join mastermind groups. They can join leads groups where you're learning from other people and sharing expertise. If you find a little stretched, have your team go find their set of vagabonds. Now, let's go to the next premise on, how do we create these cultures? How do we get started? Well, often when I'm speaking to groups, they'll say, yeah, somebody's got to do something. Something's got to do something. Well, guess what? That somebody is you and it's me. Now, you might be thinking, well, okay, but I don't have a big list of accomplishments. I don't have a big resume. I don't have a big office. I don't have a big title. It does not matter. I'm going to roll you back in history. And what I'm going to encourage all of you to do is act like the people of England when there were over 300,000 Allied soldiers stranded on the island of Dunkirk. And it looked like all would be lost because they were surrounded by the enemy. The British Navy could not get to them. The waters were too shallow, so the warships could not dock. But Winston Churchill and the people of England said, not on our watch. And Winston Churchill executed something called Operation Dynamo. And he asked the people of England, get in your boats. Let's go rescue our boys. And there were fishing boats. There were big yachts, all sizes. Now, my point in sharing this story is this. Sometimes people don't need a grand rescue. Sometimes you don't need to have this big old resume. There are so many ways that you can be a mentor because my belief is that everyone has something to contribute, everyone. So let me share with you some ways that you can be a mentor. Number one, you can be an encouragement mentor. You are that person that has that ability to welcome people as they are. You are that person that can see the possibility in people and you communicate that possibility. And because you are so good at communicating that possibility, you create something called the Pygmalion effect. And the Pygmalion effect is where people rise to the level of possibility seen in them by the others. Maybe you're that encouragement mentor. You might be a resiliency mentor. Chris Nick Itch, I want to say his name right, is such a mentor. Chris was born with Down syndrome. His parents were told he would never walk. Thankfully, he had a good mentor, his dad. And his dad did not buy that message. And his message, his mentorship conversations with his son were this: Chris, I'm just going to ask you to get better. 1% every day. 1% every day. Chris went on to apply that mentorship. First person, Down syndrome, to complete an Ironman. That's a resiliency mentor. He goes all over the country modeling and teaching resiliency. You know, maybe you are a person that will never have a conversation, a mentor conversation, but it's simply by how you live your life that people go, I want to be that person. They've gone through adversity. They've pushed through adversity. And you know what? I'm watching them and they have come out better, not bitter. Because I have seen people that lead highly successful lives, but they got this big bunch of baggage that, they're still mad about something, they're regretting something. As a resiliency mentor, without even saying a word, you can model how to lead a better life. Now, you could become a business mentor. See, this is where I think a lot of us miss it. There are so many nonprofits out there that could use your business acumen. The Tennyson Center for Children was an organization I worked on for years. I was on the board, I was a volunteer, I became the board president. And I remember when I was serving on the board, there was another board member. His name was Stan. And initially, I kind of thought Stan was a jerk because he would just test the staff on where the money was going, how it was being spent. Well, see, Stan ran a financial planning company, a wealth management company. He had a master's in accounting. He had seen where if you are not fiscally responsible, that money isn't getting invested the right place. Thank goodness he was a business mentor for this organization. It turned out he cared enough to use his expertise. So I ask you, what expertise could you bring in to a nonprofit? Well, if many of you are in sales, I have volunteered my time at this association and others where I go in and teach selling skills to their development team. And their development team is pretty good, but I used to do sales training full time for a living. What can you do? Where can you make a difference? And then you could be a tough love mentor. Yes, I am also a product of tough love. And I'm going to go back to that nice man that you heard about before, Klein Boyd. Well, after being a regional sales manager, I got promoted to vice president of sales. And the good news is when you have a tough love mentor, they care enough to hold what you call the carefrontation conversations. Kim Scott writes about this in her wonderful book, Radical Candor. Well, my boss, Klein, had one of those conversations with me. VP of sales, sales are up, retention is good, and I'm walking down to the office for the yearly review. And I have to tell you, I probably was feeling a little arrogant because of we were having a lot of success, and I'm thinking this is going to be easy peasy. Well, I sit down and the conversation begins. Colleen, first of all, I want to congratulate you and your team. You've done an excellent job, and we're really pleased with the revenue that they brought in. And second, I want to acknowledge your work ethic. You are first in and last out. However, I have been observing you, and something needs to change. Well, Easy went running out the door. Peasy went running after him. He said, Colleen, you've become so task oriented that when you come into this office, you don't even look left or right. You got your head down. You're full of what you're going to do that day. I don't even think you say good morning to your assistant, who's here often as early as you are. And then I've observed when you walk to the break room, you're walking right past the customer service department. And I don't think you're acknowledging or saying thank you for the very support they're giving your team. That has to change. Now, I can't tell you how the rest of this review went. I remember getting back to my office and I was upset. And then I thought, he's right. That was a tough love conversation. That was a carefrontation conversation. It was also a values conversation because, see, Klein was a multimillionaire. However, he practiced the golden rule. And the golden rule was treat others the way you want to be treated. He did not care if my team was bringing in revenue because he wasn't going to accept this behavior. I cannot tell you how many sales organizations I've seen where sales leaders are accepting really non-productive, non-value from some of their top producers because they're bringing in the money. So I'm throwing out two challenges for the sales leaders listening. Where do you need to have a tough love conversation to honor the core values of the company? So let's keep moving. So now, how do I start? Because often one of the obstacles for people is well, Colleen, I really don't have time. Well, I want to dispute that because my belief and what we wrote about in the book was that mentorship can happen in a moment. So if you take a look at this picture, yes, this is me about 30 years ago. There's Klein on the far left, and then standing next to me is the founder of Varsity, Jeff Webb. And I'm going to tell you about a mentor conversation that again changed the trajectory of my career. So I'm going to go back to when I was a regional sales manager. And at the time, Don Tranum was our VP of sales, and he chose and left. He gave a nice resignation, but they were having trouble filling the position. I was not applying for the position. So one night down at our catalog shoot, Jeff comes and sits down beside me. And we have a little bit of small talk, and it turns to big talk. And he starts asking me, why aren't you applying for this VP of sales position? And I'm giving a bunch of excuses. Well, I think I want to move out of the corporate office and go to Colorado and be a field manager like the rest. He'd kind of accept the answer and then he'd press a little further. And finally, I fessed up and I said, I'm not ready. His answer will help get you ready. Now, that had not occurred to me that you could take on a job without being ready for it. This is why this company became so successful, because the Pygmalion effect. I see something in you you don't see in yourself. So, thought about it a couple of days, applied, and got the position. Now, my point here is this. That was one conversation. Everyone listening today, we sometimes think mentorship has to be this very formal program. It happens over a year, benchmarks, check-ins, and goals. Those programs are great, but I also want you to know mentorship happens in moments. Mentorship happens in one conversation. So let's take a look at how you get started. Well, first of all, you got to slow down. Catalog your talents. Maybe you're really well versed on hard skills. When I go back to some of the nonprofit work I do, they have lawyers that come on their boards. They have like Stan, who is a really sharp guy at accounting. And I know for me, I have gone into nonprofits and I've taught sales training and I've taught emotional intelligence training. But you know what? You might be that person that's really good at the soft skills. And so you might be the person that can teach people empathy. You can teach them assertiveness. You can teach them how to get past self-limiting beliefs. Catalog your talents. Everyone has something to contribute. The next thing I'd ask you to do is when you're sitting there going, I don't have time, I don't have time. Well, do what they used to do, and I still think they do, when you'd go to a time management workshop. And I was lucky enough to attend a couple when I was in my 20s and 30s, and literally keep a log of where you're spending your time. Because I promise you, if you're like me, you're probably spending a little time on the scrolling and rolling, all right, or watching bad news. And what I want you to think about is where could that be directed? Because you probably have 30 minutes in a month. Find 30 minutes in a month to help and contribute. And maybe that's 30 minutes every other week. But if you don't do a time audit, you don't know where you're wasting time that could be better directed helping others. And then here's a creative way to bring in mentorship into your companies. So take a look at this screen. The bottom picture shows a panel. One of my favorite things that I encourage companies to do is whether it's at a meeting, on a Zoom meeting, you bring in a panel of seasoned executive or seasoned veterans at your company. However, here's the difference. What I want that panel to do is share all the failures they've had as they built their careers. Because see, often in life, we will see these people on stage and you see the glory, but you never hear the story. I've been a member of some of these panels, and I love sharing the story of when I was building this business and I had partnered with a woman that said, oh no, I'll get the people in the room. You just come up and speak. So I went to this hotel downtown Denver, Colorado, where I live. And I was like, oh, this doesn't look real good. And then I go inside to deliver my speech. One person showed up. One. See, today I have spoken on lots of stages. So people see the glory, but they don't hear the story. The second thing you can do is this comes from Carrie Meisel. She, when she was working at COTG, she started recognizing this, the top picture, that some of the new graduates were very smart, but they weren't good at connecting and communicating. Remember, The ones that are coming into your office right now grew up with screens. They grew up during COVID. There was some isolation. So, not their fault, but guess what? We need to be teaching a better way. And so she would create a scavenger hunt where all of them had to meet with the executives in the company. Some was in person, some was on Zoom, and ask questions. Now, what did that do? It created community. It created connection. It was teaching communication skills. It was teaching people to be really interested in other people. Maybe you host a scavenger hunt. Or the third thing you can do, if you're really busy, tack it on to something else. Get creative. What would be wrong? And this is obviously Colorado. What would be wrong if you've got a mentee saying, hey, I'm going to take a hike. And if they're not really that much in shape, make it a flat one, right? Walk around a park. Or I know this from being a member of the National Speakers Association for over 20 years. We often have speakers fly into our local chapter, and we get very, very good speakers coming in. We always made sure that someone picked them up at the airport. It was a token of hospitality and also just ease of travel. You know what happens in that 45-minute ride from the airport? Mentorship. Because they get to talk to this speaker and they're willing to share their information. You, as a mentor, if you're feeling a little tight on time, have your mentee drive you to the airport. They can be your Uber driver. As a leader, get creative about creating community, creating connection, making sure people don't have to go it alone. And then if you're one of these people that are really thinking, oh gosh, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time, I'm going to ask you to do something that we teach in all of our emotional intelligence workshops. Examine your stories. Because here's the reality. What you think long enough, over and over, becomes your truth. And if you keep saying, I don't have time, I don't have time, I'm not equipped, I'm not equipped, it becomes your truth. And the fact is, the subconscious mind can't decipher from what's the truth or not truth. So if you keep telling yourself you're not equipped, you don't have time, that creates an emotion. I'm not equipped. The emotion is, you know what? I'm not good enough. I don't have enough talent, not enough time. That almost creates angst, which dictates the actions you take. Your thoughts create your future actions. My suggestion is change your self-talk. I am equipped. I can be a resiliency mentor. I can be an encouragement mentor. I can be a spiritual mentor. I can be a tough love mentor. Everyone has something to contribute. I have time. What you think, you become. It's called metacognition. Think about what you're thinking. And even in your cultures, think about what are we doing every day to create mentorship cultures? Because again, I don't know if you need a program, but I do know you need a culture. So let's take a look at a wonderful quote. And this comes from Linda Ellis. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. What is your dash going to be from the time you're born till the time you go away? Is it going to be, well, I was going to make a difference. I was going to be a difference. Where's your dash going to be? I made a difference for one person. Because my goal in challenging you today is I'd like you to be the next greatest generation. I want to be the next greatest generation. Tom Brokaw wrote this book many years ago. It was titled The Greatest Generation, and it was about the men and women that came home from World War II. And you know what's always interesting about that? They didn't come home and immediately get on TikTok, Instagram, announcing, we just saved the world. If you want to study influencers, those people were influencers. Instead, they settled back in because you know what? Their belief in doing what they had done was their duty, their honor. I believe it's our duty, it's our responsibility to create the greatest generation, to create the next greatest generation. And the way we're going to do that is decide to become the mentor who mattered. The way we're going to do that is to create mentorship cultures. So that's my challenge to you. And I hope you'll stay in touch with me. I'm on LinkedIn. We created a slide if you want to take a picture of that. Marcus was so gracious. He's created this wonderful digital room for us. So I do want to stay connected with you. I welcome conversations and I'm here to help in any way I can. Because to my core, I believe being the mentor who mattered is going to be one of the most important things you do in your life. So, Marcus, I'm going to open it up for questions, and I thank you again for having me as your guest.
Yeah, thanks again. Do you want to go back to the QR slide so people can
Yes,
snap a
absolutely.
yeah, so snap a couple photos there. Actually, I think we've actually got all of these in the digital room. So if you click the one link, it'll have all of these links. Um,
Okay.
and be sure to connect with Colleen on LinkedIn. Let's just go through, get your questions and comments into the chat now. I'm just going to go back up here.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's see. Melissa called out she's going to try that scavenger hunt with some of her newer folks,
Yeah.
and then love
I
to
thought that was a great
dash.
idea that I was given by Carrie.
Um, Patricia said helping to pick up morale and in turn. Oh, that was from the poll. Gina loved your storytelling style with your southern accents there.
Well, Memphis was
Um,
located in the South, honey. Yeah.
um, let's see. Yeah, really useful. Thank you so much. Just a bunch of thank yous. Um, So no questions coming in. Let's just check the chat here or the Q&A panel just in case. Yeah,
Maybe
I
we
guess
can ask them what's their biggest takeaway, Marcus?
sure. Yeah, go ahead and add to the chat. What's your biggest takeaway from today? If you're gonna become a mentor, and let's see. Yeah, get those in right now. We'll give it a couple minutes, Colleen.
Sure.
Um, where's the resource? So the resource room will be available as soon as we're done here, or you can click this link. Juliana, she joined late. Yeah, so Krista said, I think this will help me define my mentoring style, so
Oh,
I
very
can
good.
get better at it. Catherine said, small moments matter just as much.
Absolutely.
Encourages me to keep doing that. Gina said, I think my biggest takeaway is that I can make a difference in someone else's life by supporting them using Pygmalion effect.
Yes.
Um, Make a difference even to one individual. Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway is one individual compared to
Mhm.
what's the saying? You don't want to take one bite of an elephant, you want to take small bites.
Yeah.
Something like
Well,
that.
and
I said that
and I will
wrong, I
share
know,
with your viewers, I share my own mentorship stories, but we collected 25 stories, and they are from all walks of life. Okay, so I know we've got lots of people in the sales profession here, but I wanted to include other stories because my belief has always been if we just read about sales and sales leadership, I don't think you expand your thinking as much as you could. So we have these wonderful stories from healthcare, fighter pilots. Uh, oh gosh, there's a gentleman that started works in nonprofits. So we do have a lot of stories, and but the theme is it was generally one person that made a difference.
Yeah. We've got a couple other people chiming in. Mentorship is the missing element for upcoming generation to get them focused.
Yeah.
Small moments turn into big differences. People hear the glory but don't know the stories. I might be building my stories right now, is what Marlene said. Helped me to narrow my focus. I love the language. There's an abundance of mentoring opportunities with my strengths, appearances, and exposures.
Perfect.
Um, yeah, so I think no general questions, I guess, coming in, just a lot of comments, which is great to see. So maybe I can stay on for a couple of minutes, see if anything comes in, and I'll shoot those over to
Okay.
you. And we'll just give people 10 minutes back. How about that? Anything you
Um,
want to leave with?
Well, I want to share something that I was listening to a Simon Sinek interview. Many of you probably know of him, the author speaker. And it struck me, and I don't really have it formulated, so I'm just going to kind of talk freestyle. It kind of cemented to me why mentorship is more important in building community. Because as he explained, and I actually address this in the book, we've had a lot of places where people used to get their sense of purpose. So let me think if I've got it right. So more people used to attend church where they got that, okay, support and encouragement. Then people got their social network through, he called it the bowling league. And like it or not, often business now, because there's been a decrease in both of those, there's a higher expectation of people coming into your companies expecting that. Now, I don't think companies have to serve everything, but a mentor can say, well, you know what? Probably the reason you're feeling isolated, probably the feeling you're feeling this, is they can direct them to get more, I call it other absorbed. Because one of the worries I have about technology, and I even look at this with myself, we're the selfie generation, on LinkedIn and all that, we're posting and liking. But what it subconsciously leads to is a more self-absorbed person than an other absorbed. And the irony behind all of the increased anxiety and depression that's going on is the more self-absorbed you are, the more depressed you become. So it's really this odd self-fulfilling prophecy that people don't even know. But a lot of that is by the technology and the social media sites. So be very careful. Like when I'm posting something on LinkedIn, I'm absolutely doing it for marketing, but I check my motive. Is this to make me just this wonderful person, or am I posting something to truly help another individual? And I believe that can come across in your communication.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Herbert said $1 million presentation. Thank you.
Well, I'll take that. Thank you. Very nice.
All right. So I'll go ahead and in the presentation here, and then I'll stay on and